how do we turn a breakdown or breakdowns into breakthroughs? Bear with me here, because this will, and please feel free to interrupt me if you have anything to say, any questions. But first we have to acknowledge and accept the breakdown. How many times in life have we experienced others that won't acknowledge that there's a problem? Often we hear this with drug abuse, with alcoholism. One of the top steps of AA is you have to acknowledge that you have a problem. You have to accept that there's a problem. In the case of having a breakdown, I have to be willing to acknowledge that there has been a breakdown. And I have to accept that it exists. There's a quote that I really enjoyed. My 6th grade teacher told me when I was younger, when I was confiding in him. Me and him are still friends to this day. He said, stress is resisting what is. Stress is the resistance of reality. So acknowledgement and acceptance is the first step that you can really start to build the foundation or lay out the path towards a breakthrough in your life. You have to recognize that breakdowns are a natural part of life and can be a catalyst for change. As we spoke earlier in the quote from Robert Kennedy, how much has the civil rights movement moved since the assassination of Martin Luther King? Exponentially. Because breakdowns like an assassination, breakdowns like failures in tumultuous times are natural. They're a natural part of life, but they can be the catalyst for our change. And we do have to grieve. Has anyone ever heard of like the stages of grief?
Yeah.
You know, relationships end, things of that nature. Yeah, it's very healthy, right? It's very empowering to know that, you know, in my worst times, to know like, oh, this is natural. I'm angry right now, but then I'm crying an hour later, and now I'm laughing.
And so, one thing that we had to learn is the stages of grief. I personally thought you had to go step by step, and my twin's behind me, but what we learned, even us being twins, you may not go in the same order or not experience all of them that are listed.
That's so well said. We might not even go in the same order, right? Yeah, because even if we're going to try to recognize something, we might think, well, it has to be this way. This is how I reach a breakthrough because this is how so-and-so did it. Oh, I'm not on that right path, right?
That's
Remember?
what I thought.
Yeah, very well said. Because as we talked about in the beginning, right? There's not one path to success. There's so many diverse, interesting stories in life about how people reach or personal growth. So recognize that breakdowns are a natural part of life. They can be the catalyst for change. Acknowledge the situation and allow yourself to feel the emotions associated with it. When I used to teach relationship education, I started with this organization, and I remember the first time I did a presentation, they were like, okay, you gotta go to this place, it's 10:30 in the morning, we do a weekly presentation at 10:30. And I was like, great. So I go to the place, and it's all women. And these are relationship building classes for couples. And it's 10:30 in the morning, you know, these are ladies that have young children, 0 to 5 years old, they're in Head Start programs, so they're doing their duty as patriots, they're taking care of their children. And the men that they're with are working. And I told the supervisor, I said, well, you know, I want to talk to the men. I can't talk to half of the equation, I want to talk to the whole equation. So we started doing classes at night because we had to acknowledge and feel the emotions together. Not, hey, I went to this class and guess what, man, there's all this cool information. I met this dude named D, he's telling all this, he talks a lot, but he's telling all this cool stuff. And the guy's like, well, who's this guy you're talking to in his classes? I don't know, you know. They're not there. We have to be present. And not just literally, but even, you know, internally and spiritually. We have to be present within ourselves to feel. And when I would talk to the men, you know, I just did a presentation a few weeks ago called Feelings Are the Secret. It's not an exciting thing for guys. There probably was a lot of guys working on the dairy when they're on Facebook and they said, feelings are the secret. You know, what's this? You know, well, I ain't going to that. But when you sit down and you talk about how powerful you become when you can handle and control your feelings, how strong, you know, the way you can describe to different people, and they start to recognize, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm being a better father, I'm being a better husband, I'm being a better partner, being a better coworker. Often in society, we're told not to feel. Backs over feelings. It's very political now. Don't feel. Don't worry about people suffering. Don't this and that. These people are feeling is a very, very important part of the situation. So acknowledge the situation, allow yourself to feel the emotions associated with it. And just an asterisk to say, honesty allows you to move forward with clarity. Have we ever been in life where we felt like we're almost lying to ourselves? Or that we're around someone and they're kind of in denial, like we said at the beginning, they're not acknowledging the truth. You know, like I used the example of substance abuse. I just drink because, you know, it helps me relax. But then there's other problems that come with the drinking. That person is, they're using it as a positive. It's this stopgap. But you might ask them, well, you know, is there something else you can do other than drinking? But they're so attached, they're so connected to that. So the more honesty you have in your life, relationships, through yourself, the more clarity that comes out of your life. The second step is to learn about the experience. Okay, so a couple weeks ago we did a presentation on boundaries, and I said, when you're sharing a boundary, you got to really be specific. You know, imagine we're talking to our kid and we say, clean the kitchen. And the kid's like, all right, and then goes to the kitchen. Their version of cleaning is like, everything looks good, let me get this rag and just wipe that real quick, and oh, I guess I'll dump out the trash, and, you know, that. And then we go in and we say, hey, the dishes aren't done, and the ones that you did do, they're all wet, you didn't dry them, and you know, there's ketchup, a little bit of ketchup in the fridge, and look at that, there's dust all over the ground, and we might say something rude, we might even shame our own child, because we're not being specific, we're not helping them learn about the experience, learn about the boundary, learn about what we're trying to help them do. So we want to become experts on what our breakdown. We want to understand, hey, I need to learn about what happened, what were the things that came about, how did this all go? You want to reflect on what led to the breakdown. Why did this happen? And like as you said earlier, there's stages of grief. You might be in one stage of grief and you see the breakdown as, I'm angry, it was this person's fault. You might be in the stage of grief where you're feeling really depressed and you're like, it was my fault. I lost. This is why it happened. I'm the one who did this. And so understand that when you're reflecting, to be kind to yourself, that this is a process. This isn't something that's like, okay, I just did it right here. No, it's a process of how we go about our self-reflection. It's always changing. If a person could say, hey, who was I 10 years ago? Did we all think exactly the same about everything 10 years ago? No. And sometimes we thought very differently about very important things. So we want to be kind to ourselves throughout this process in our reflection. Identify how your approach or mindset may have contributed. And notice when I put may, I put an underline and I made it blue. Because I'm not saying it did. But we have to ask ourselves the question. When I had this breakdown, what was my approach to life? What was my approach to this situation? What was my mindset? May have it contributed to this? When I was a residential counselor and I worked with youth, many times they would come to us with their problems in life. And when you talked about the accountability part of looking inwardly, sometimes people would become very defensive. And so it certainly depends on how you look at it as well, how it's brought to your attention. Because some people can be like, well, I think you were the problem, or you did this, or you did that. But within ourselves, within our ability to self-reflect, we want to consider, well, what was it that could have been? How could I have been better? And self-reflection can provide valuable insights for future decision-making. So the more that you can rely on yourself, the more autonomy that you can have emotionally, the more empowered that you are, and that you get these insights for decision-making. Sometimes in life we reach out to people. In a past presentation I talked about emotional immaturities. Sometimes we grow quicker than the people we're around. And sometimes the people we're around grow quicker than us. And when we go to them for advice, if they're more emotionally immature than we are, it might be really bad advice. It might be really bad advice, or advice that doesn't fit the life that we really want. And if they're ahead of us, it might be advice that we're not ready to hear in the moment or to implement in our lives. For example, you often see, there's videos on Facebook, hey, man, you just got a bootstrap, man. If you just do this, you're gonna start buying houses and selling houses. And it's like, oh, that's cool. You're worth $100 million. You came from a family that had business and wealth, but you're giving advice to people living below the poverty line. How realistic is it for them to implement those ideas? And so it was one of the reasons I talk about autonomy and personal agency and controlling your thoughts in your life, because how often in life are we going to others, which it has its place. We do need support, but we want to create mechanisms and avenues where we can reflect on our own. And maybe when we're done reflecting, we can present that to people that we trust. The third thing is we have to shift our mindset. Another good book written by Carol Dweck is Mindset. It's a terrific book on growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. It's literally focused on that terrific read. Rather than focusing on failure, view the breakdown as a learning opportunity. How many times in life are we so fortunate to run into people that have gone through something really terrible and they're just learning from it? There's so much humility in the way they discuss their circumstances. They're not beating themselves up, they're not beating up other people. I have a family member that was diagnosed with cancer this year, and I was just so touched. Every time I speak to this person, they're full of life. I want to live. I'm so excited for the future. I'm so excited to learn and grow from this experience. It's inspiring. And so rather, the energy that we're putting on the failure, or the energy that we're putting on the breakdown, if we reframe it and we see it as like, this was awful, but I can grow from this. It's possible. I can learn from this. Just saying something like that brings so much power to yourself. Reframe the challenge as opportunities for growth, innovation, and personal development. Being a guy and growing up in guy culture the way I was when I was a kid, I was always around guys on dairies and goofing off. We were a big fan of the Rocky movies. Huge fan of my cousin. I love my cousin. He's a big fan of Rocky. And it was all and so every problem that we had, man, I messed up in school, I didn't do good on the test, working out, things of that nature. It was all about this mindset of reframing. In the Rocky movies, he comes up from poverty, he gets this chance to fight the champion. No one believes in him, he's a major underdog. He ends up losing the fight, but the moral of the story was that he met the challenge and he almost won the world championship. And so, if you take your life as not so seriously, and just say, what, I'm here. I'm, this in a sense, this human being having this spiritual experience. I'm sitting here looking at, I can't even see my face, but I'm looking at I'm here talking to people, I'm connecting, I'm doing things. So I might fail, I might say something that doesn't make sense, or I might say something that changes someone's life. At the end of the day, I'm just trying. I'm here. You guys go home, you got your plans for the day, for the weekend, for the week. You're just here to innovate, to grow, to be a better person, to be a better version of yourself, right? And to encourage others. So when you look at life that way, instead of, how can it be sometimes? We look at, look what happened. Man, if I had only had this, life would have been different. Man, if so-and-so had only done this, life would have been different. Oh gosh, it's so, hot outside today. It's so this. It's not to say that we're lying. Some of it is very valid and true. But my question to humanity would be, how helpful is that? How is that helping you? Because the ultimate goal is we want to be better, right? So we also want to practice gratitude for what we have. Lessons learned in difficult times. I have, there's some people that are very fortunate and blessed. to have wealth in many ways. But in this story is a blessing of having money. And I had a coworker come to me once and they said, my kids are just so difficult. They just want everything for Christmas. I mean, they literally want a car for Christmas. One of them wants a car for Christmas this year. And they're not happy. They're not grateful for what they have. We give them everything. And they want more.
That's why it hurts, because they get everything.
Yeah, great point, right? And she asked me, what do you think? Because I was, it's funny, I was teaching relationship classes. I don't know. I'm not a father. But I just thought of it practically. I said, well, why don't you go to the dollar store? Back when the dollar store actually cost $1. Why don't you go to the dollar store and get $10 and buy 10 gifts? I think this person had like 4 kids at the time. I said, buy $10 gifts for each of your children. And find a place where you can go and take those gifts to needy children. And have your children give to them the gifts. And discuss with your children how those children reacted to you bringing $10 gifts for them. I mean, we have all seen the stuff at the dollar store. Some of it's pretty neat, but some of it's not so neat. And how are those kids going to react? Well, those kids are going to be extremely grateful. More often than not, you go to kids that are in poverty and you give them things, they're going to thank you so much. Oh, that's great, I used to work with domestic violence shelters, transitional living programs. Those kids were amazing. The level of gratitude they had through suffering. And we can learn from that. We can learn from ourselves, we can learn from others. There's so much opportunity to connect on a deeper level. So gratitude isn't something that just happens inherently. Most of the people you meet that are very grateful, that are very connected to gratitude, they practice it. It's something they do. Maybe it's not something they do overtly, but it's something that is like, hi, thank you, appreciate it, so on and so forth. You have to practice it. That's how you get better. Just like an athlete practices, you practice your mental training. If I'm grateful for the little things, it creates an environment around me that's healthy. So seek positive affirmations and focus on the possibilities that lie ahead. I put the positive affirmation piece because sometimes we become overwhelmed. We get overwhelmed with problems. We're so fortunate today to have YouTube and to have podcasts and to have all these different things that we can literally, I'm hearing Dustin, I can hear you snoring. No, I'm waking you up because it's going to be on the recording. And I'm going to be laughing like crazy when I hear it. I'm going to be like, there's a guy snoring and half.
I actually hear, I can hear what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying because you're snoring.
I was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I promise you I would lay the pillow out if I wasn't hearing snoring. But seek positive affirmations and focus on the possibilities that lie ahead. So positive affirmations can be a great, you're going through a really, really hard time and you need almost like a triage. In something like YouTube, you could say, hey, 20 minutes of positive affirmations. And you sit there and you're listening to it. It's telling you, just saying things, I'm a great person. I'm gonna be successful today. I'm gonna do really positive things. I'm gonna help myself. I'm gonna be happy today. Literally saying that to yourself, you're creating that reality. As we discussed in a past presentation, you're putting the impression on your subconscious that you're happy. You're putting the impression on your subconscious that you're a grateful person, that you're someone who loves others. And that expresses itself in your life, I've been to presentations that I was just, goofing with Dustin right now. The first presentation, there was a baby crying. Remember, Dustin?
Yeah.
There was a baby crying. And I was thinking to myself, I'm 40 now, and I was like, probably 15 years ago, I might have said, it's kind of distracting, this and that. But then I thought about it, and I said, how beautiful that someone would come with their baby and try to get through this presentation and watch it. And the baby is just being a baby. It's just doing baby things. The problem isn't the baby, the problem is how I handle it, how I see it. So yeah, if the baby was crying like bloody murder to where I have to talk like this, then it's ruining the environment and we'll address it. But if the baby's like, okay, so be it. And these are the things that we can control. We can control. We cannot necessarily expect everyone else to do everything perfect or right. So the fourth piece of advice, seek support and build a strong foundation. So the first three parts of advice I felt were very personal to self. But in this one, if we're so fortunate to have people that connect with, that we can connect with trusted friends, family members, or support groups that can offer encouragement, guys, if we're so fortunate to have that in our lives, then we ought to use that tool. We ought to connect with those people, right? So for some people it's faith-based, for some people it's their family, for some people it's their friends, for some people it's a group on the internet. Whatever it is, if it's positive and it's helping you, that's a good thing, and that's okay. It's very okay. Consider seeking professional help with a therapist or a counselor to address underlying issues and develop coping mechanisms. I'll say this, there's this huge, there's these feelings about mental health and therapy. And I think, and I've discussed this in the past, one of the reasons that it's so hard for people to connect with therapy and mental health is because there's so many barriers nowadays. Insurance, finances, there's these limiting factors that keep us from doing the things we want because we think, well, I don't want to go I got $100 I can spend, I don't want to go to a counselor for 1 visit or 2 visits, I'd like to do this thoroughly. I'd like to go all the way through, or my insurance is not going to cover it, or they're going to do this. We are so fortunate. I mean, there are literally therapists. If anyone listens to podcasts or YouTube, Therapy in a Nutshell. She has 2 million followers. I think her name's Emma McAdams. I think she's a licensed marriage and family therapist. Tremendous advice. She literally goes through all the stuff. She's just fantastic. This is absolutely free. Free. On YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. And she's not the only one. There's somebody, so you like a different flavor. You like someone who talks a different type of way. You like something that might be more faith-based. You like something that speaks to you in another way. There's a search bar on every website. And these are the types of things that when we have our friends coming to us, that's where that, the practicing gratitude. We don't have to sound like crazy people. We can say, man, actually, in a way, this could be a positive. Because now I can share with someone how lucky we really are to have all these assets that we can utilize for free. So yeah, you might not have that therapist sitting in front of you with the notepad, but you have these other avenues to connect. There's hotlines, there's all kinds of things. So to touch on coping mechanisms, I think sometimes there's this idea that coping mechanisms, I've heard sometimes it can be seen as negative, but I think it's very healthy. So imagine if you have a problem, like maybe a self-destructive issue. I used to I've said the example a few times, like what happens when we get a flat tire? We get out of the car and we change the tire, right? Mm-hmm. We don't get out of the car and stab the other 3 tires. Mm-hmm. And say, I had a flat tire, this is awful, and get mad. But sometimes in life we do that. Sometimes in life, I used to have a big problem with food. And I would be like, I had a bad day. Well, go into Jack in the Box. Jack in the Box is going to fix my day today. Right. And I realized I'm not feeling good. I'm eating too much Jack in the Box.
It tastes good though. It tastes good for a
Yeah,
little bit.
it can, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it was a coping mechanism that ultimately wasn't working for me. So what did I do? I took the coping mechanism and said, hey, I'm going to go to the dog park with my dog every day. I'm going to go and work out every day. I'm going to start eating a healthier nutrition. And I saw the benefits in my life. And it was something that, has evolved over many years. Now it's a different program that I'm on. But coping with issues and creating mechanisms that help us cope with the things we're struggling with is very, very healthy. And it doesn't have to be a long-term solution. It could even be a short-term. Does anyone have any idea? Can anyone share any coping mechanisms that you're aware of? No?
My sister taught me when I'm upset or whatever, name 5 things, 5 colors, whatever you see.
Right. And so when she said, what would that be used for?
Just to calm yourself down.
Right. Wow. So almost like a distraction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's very interesting because it's a way of taking us out of the moment that we've created, our feelings about a situation, and putting maybe through distraction or through refocus onto something else. Is that correct?
Yeah, it kind of brings you down to a different level where you can handle it. And another thing I've personally done too is DBT dialectical behavioral therapy. If anybody's heard of that, I recommend it. They have on YouTube. It has it not only for knowing about yourself, but mindfulness, and it tells you about how you do things and has interpersonal relationship on how to deal with people.
Wow.
So it kind of does both.
When we're done, can we talk about that for a second?
Definitely.
Because I'd like to write some of that down. Thank you.
Okay.
So these are beautiful things, right? So, it's one of the things, whenever someone, in life, we see it in popular media and in politics today, is the putting down of growth. Almost like growth is inherent. It's like, I want positive vibes only, but I don't want to hear about your growth process. I don't want to understand all the stuff that goes into that. What we got to understand is it's a journey. It's a journey. Not all of us are prepackaged, perfectly made. We're constantly evolving. A lot of sports coaches say every day you're getting a little bit better, you're getting a little bit worse. And I find that to be very true also with mental health. And that's why there's a maintenance program, coping mechanism, positive affirmations, gratitude. These are all things that help you get a little bit better every day. And guess what? The more you practice it, the more inclination you have to share it with your loved ones, with your friends. Because your friend walks in the room now and they're going through the worst time of their life. And you're like, you know what I do? I think of all the things I'm fortunate to have. I started addressing, acknowledging, learning about the situation, shifting my mindset, and seeking support, and I'm here for you too. All of a sudden you're the teacher. And it's a really amazing thing.
I had that experience where when you go to certain people, there's two things I was gonna say. When you go to certain people, I could get frustrated when they don't understand what they want to do, don't want to talk negative. Until you look at it a different way, they don't understand it, so they can't help. They can't help that they don't understand where you're coming from. They just can't. Even if you tell them, they don't even know how, if they wanted to. So instead of saying that, they're like, no, stay away. So then you're trying to figure it out on your own. That's the hard part. You're searching, you're reading, you're doing all of this by yourself, and then you revelation, you make a change, and somebody at work notices it. I had someone come to me and crying. I said, I was listening to her. I know, you know what, try this. And I gave her a couple of books that helped me, and I said, now, everyone has their own journey. I don't know if this will work for you, but it's $20. I saw it on Instagram, and Amazon has it, and she said, okay, so she tried it. She was so excited. So I looked at her face after she was reading and thought, okay, I felt like I didn't have anyone to help me on my journey one-on-one. But if I can do that for someone else who doesn't have to struggle to get there, that feels good. She was so happy. So it helps me learn skills so that you can help somebody else.
Absolutely.
It's hard to learn on your own if no one can understand. Finding a group that's supportive is very hard because they don't go through the things that we go through. So you do feel like you're alone. So if you tell yourself, I don't want that person to be alone like I feel alone, that feels good. That makes you want to learn more to help others so they're not going through the same struggle.
Do you have a question in the back, ma'am? Did you have a question in the back? Yeah.
No, I just wanted to kind of go along with your story. Something traumatic happened to me, and I showed up at my sister's, and I was crying, right? And her and another lady, I'm like, why did this happen? And blah, blah. And she goes, nobody cares why it happened. Here's a sandwich. She invited everyone over for a pool party. I forgot about why. She says, you cannot rationalize stupid. We're never, to this minute, I don't have the answers, but I will never forget that her and my friend threw me a pool party, invited everyone in the world over. And that, I don't know, it just goes along. Sometimes you don't know what to do.
Let me piggyback on that because you made it. That's a great story.
Isn't that a great
That's a great
analogy?
story.
But my sister goes, I don't know what to do. I'm not emotional.
No,
Right.
that's. I'm so glad you shared that. And I just real quick, I want to jump off of that because it's going to help us here. That is a perfect example. What you guys are sharing, the diversity of how we see things. In the last presentation, I talked about relationships. How much are we seeing divorce? How much are we seeing people split up? How much are we seeing people not want to even connect, even though they're yearning for it? Because of our differences and how we see life, how difficult we are having connecting to reality, right? So in that moment, that story where she was a little bit more firm, a little bit more tough, right? Kind of like, hey, we're just going to focus on this, forget that noise. That spoke to you. And in that moment, it helped you. What's intriguing is a different person might have experienced that as like traumatic. They might have said, I've been invalidated. My feelings don't matter. I'm extremely hurt. This is what happens when I go out and try to connect with people, is I run into people that see me as being weak or this or that, right? Who's right and who's wrong? I would contest that nobody is right and nobody's wrong.
Because you're all different. They're
Right.
You're underlying what happened.
Exactly. What really matters is how we experience life. You know, I'm not trying to go into a religious subtext here, but it's just something that's on my mind because I do research. And they asked, you know, that I study all history, but there's also the life of Jesus. And there's some scripture that says they brought the coin of the time, which was the Roman coin that had Caesar on it. And they said, hey, in our Bible, we're not supposed to deal with this coin. We're not even supposed to touch this coin. And this is wrong, and we're getting taxed, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. And they asked Jesus Christ in the book. They said, what should we do? And he goes, who's on the coin? And they said, Caesar. And Jesus says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. And they're blown away by it. Because that was, if you understand the history of Jerusalem in that time, that was an incredibly radical thing to say. Incredibly radical. And so what I would say, using that example, because let's put that back in the box, is what is yours, and what is theirs. And what is our job is to take what is theirs and to extract the best we can out of it, right? So if someone's a little tough with us and says, hey man, we're at a pool party right now, I'm not trying to hear all of that about your life, maybe we might not want to take it personal and say, you know what? Oh, this person is just trying to guide me to enjoy the now or the present. And we say, I know that this is how I handle things, is by talking and expressing myself. Well, when I get home, I might have a journal, or I might call a friend that's more interested in hearing my perspective on this matter, what have you. This is where we're becoming problem solvers instead of problem creators. Because it's easy to say, oh, I can't hang out with that person no more. They said something I didn't want to hear. Or I can't be around people because of this, or I can't do this because of that. You see? You had a point you wanted to?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, when people care about you, even if they don't help you in the way that you wish that they did, you know, they will do something and they will stick with you, like throwing a party. You know?
Yeah.
But there are some people that will just rather just not deal with whatever you're going through.
Yeah, I love how you said it. I talked to a mother recently I think she's in her late 60s, and her son is struggling. How many of us are seeing people in their 30s and 40s struggling to launch out of life? It's not the same life that it used to be. You can't come from another country, get a factory job, and finance a house that's worth $1 million nowadays. It's not the same. We've got people with master's degrees that are struggling, right? And this person was telling me about their son getting really angry and to something that the person said to them. And I said to the person, I said, do they do this to everyone? Do you see them lash out at everyone? And no, just me and the dad and so on. And I said, it's a really funny form of love that we have in this world. That we would share our deepest shames and pains viscerally in the way that we talk to one another, even our own parents, our own husband and wife, our children. Now, I've had people yell at me before in my life, and I've told them thank you. Because our relationship is intimate enough for you to think that you can yell at me that way. That you can trust me that way, that you can yell. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's okay, right? But I'm saying that the way that we look at things can give us a certain level of peace. It can be that coping mechanism that can get us through that day. Because on one hand, I can say, that's how I'm going to look at someone yelling at me, or I can say, I'm going to Jack in the Box, and I'm gonna buy 1,000 pounds of food today, and I'm gonna do, more destructive behavior. So the last part of the breakdowns into breakthroughs is develop a plan and take action. Create a clear plan moving forward, setting realistic, fair goals and breaking them down into smaller, manageable steps. When we eat a steak, I love steak, we don't get a huge, gigantic bite. It's not realistic. It's not necessarily appropriate. We bite it in little bites. And it's the same with our personal development and growth. We might see our neighbor has much more success or much more, we think, a happier life than us, and we want to run to get to that life. The reality is, a lot of people in life, to get to where they got, it was little small bites, little small steps. So we want to have a clear plan. I say this in relationship education. You go and have a family meeting. You talk about your relationship, the state of the union of your relationship, how you're doing. You are clear, you are informative with each other, and you connect on a deep level. We want this at our job, right? We got to file a report. If you work with money, you got to know where all the money went. If you go, one second, I'll get to you soon. And we want to do all these things. We want to have a thoroughness, right, in our work. We have it in, we get dressed to come out. We do our hair. We brush our teeth. We make sure that we cook a meal. Oh man, like I'm out of cumin. I need cumin or else this whole recipe is going to go to disaster. But how do we do with our mental health? Do we follow the recipe to take care of our mental health? Do we create a plan for our mental health and the plans of overcoming breakthroughs? These are the things, the recipes, the things that we need to consider and create. Focus, I'm going to get to that question. I just want to finish this part. Focus on taking consistent action, even if it's small steps to build momentum and regain self-control. So staying consistent. That's a huge thing in life that we see with success and with people that are healthy is, can you stay consistent with it? So that's where these positive affirmations come in, these coping mechanisms of gratitude. It keeps you on track, okay? Your question?
Actually, no, I have wanted to say that I am 51 and I finally got my high school diploma on June 4th. And I went through graduation with a broken hip in a wheelchair. And now I'm going to be getting my own apartment for the very first time.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's such a beautiful thing to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that. These are the things, you sharing that makes our day better, to hear that from you. And also to understand probably a deep and meaningful journey to get to this point. We won't go into the details, right? But that's a powerful thing for you, such a blessing, such a wonderful thing that you've earned in your life. So happy for you. Thank you for sharing that. So we want to celebrate. Look, it was almost like it happened on purpose. Celebrate your progress. Celebrate your progress and acknowledge your accomplishments along the way, right? Like you just did, such a beautiful thing. In times sometimes we're told, not for you, but sometimes in society, don't tell us all the stuff you do. You think you're big, or you think you're, I got a raise. I don't want to hear about you making more money, or I don't want to hear about, your kid got a 4.0 beer plan. Well, you always just, pushing your kid up, this and this and that. We should be putting our arms around those moments. Even if we don't have it, we put our arms around it. Because it makes the world a better place and it feeds us in a lot of